February 7th, 2026. Well, I want to first start off by mentioning that I'm noticing, the pattern of people viewing these videos that, you know, I put a lot of different things in these videos, and sometimes some of the stuff I do later in the video might be more interesting to some of you than some of the stuff at the beginning. It's always hard to know what people are most interested in. I cover different topics, so just thought I'd mention that. But we'll start off here, I guess, with something that's very common, is this ongoing uh, Nancy Guthrie kidnapping. Um, so I guess President Trump has just announced that they've got some new leads in this case as of this recording. Of course, I don't know where that's going to, and I'm a little bit suspicious that you would make a public statement like this because it might alert the kidnappers to take some action they otherwise might not take, and it might not be a good one. But at any rate, that's out there, and this is a rather puzzling case. I guess it looks to me to be mostly a kidnapping for ransom. I personally have a theory that that what might be driving this thing. It occurred to me that given the fact that we've done such a good job of shutting down the border, and if you look at the area of Arizona, there was a lot of drug trafficking that had been going on in the previous administration. People just walking it, across the border on backpacks and stuff, the contraband. And I'm thinking, that some of the people, the organizations that actually receive these drugs and then distribute them across the country from that point to local, pushers and so forth. Let's call them the middleman of the drug trade. Not the cartel bosses that live on a nice big ranch in Mexico, but the ones on our side of the border that are in the middle of the thing. They may be really suffering a shortfall in cash, due to all this, and therefore they may be looking at other ways to raise money, and maybe this kidnapping may be an example of this. It's just a thought that could explain it. Can't prove it's true. We'll see what pans out in the end. I guess it could be just some local individuals as well. However, one of the things that could somewhat mitigate a touch against it would be the letters was stated to have a very good use of the English language and all, which, well, who knows? I mean, maybe it was translated by AI from fluent Spanish into fluent English or something. I don't know. It's just an idea. It could be something totally different. It could be some kind of tech geek type guy trying to pull off the perfect crime. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But I thought that's interesting that the president's indicating they've got some substantive leads now that I don't know what that might lead to a resolution. Interesting. But this is kind of a topical thing, and this is not the main topic of what we're going to get into here. Let's get on to other issues, which I think is kind of fascinating. We've had the first meeting, I guess, between the U.S. representatives and the Iranians in this recent round of talks over mainly the Iranian nuclear program and I guess their missiles and the treatment of protesters. And so apparently that process has started. So in addition to having the meetings we've been having on trying to end the Ukraine war, we had a at this particular meeting, which so far doesn't seem to be, it was a constructive meeting type thing. So we'll have to see, what all that leads to. I do think that I'm still skeptical that we're really going to launch this big attack on Iran, because I don't think it pans out too good for Trump's overall political objectives here of trying to win the election, for instance. So anyhow, but at least that process is underway, and I guess our forces are still in the area and getting more into position. There was an incident where a drone apparently was moving in the direction of the Abraham Lincoln Strike Group and was shot down. Interestingly enough, by an F-35C, which is interesting as a choice, but of course it can do that too, as well as the F-18s. But I mean, I generally tend to see that more as a strike aircraft. But at any rate, although it does have air-to-air capacities, of course. I don't think this was an attempt to actually attack the task force. but it might be an attempt to locate it, which could then lead to a subsequent effort. I doubt the Iranians are going to strike first, but we'll see how that pans out. If you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. I'd appreciate that. Or you can, of course, also follow me on Rumble, so I post there as well. So anyhow, so that's kind of that thing. Another interesting development in the Ukraine war occurred is apparently the Russians have become more and more dependent on the use of Starlink communications, which I had heard some years back that, or time back, maybe a year or so ago, that they were getting Starlink terminals and were using them. I didn't realize it was so extensive that it would actually affect the scope of the offensive that they were engaged in. But at least the pro-Russian sources, such as military summary channels, seem to be kind of yelping quite a bit at this little innovation that apparently, if I understand it, that originally we're talking about just restricting the use of drones that were communicating with objects moving above a certain speed, but now apparently they've gone to what you call a whitelist system. For the area of Ukraine, I guess they're using GPS combined with the whitelist system, which means they're just permitting certain IDs to operate, which have been found to be Ukrainian, and anything that's not Ukrainian, I guess, is not permitted to communicate. So that apparently has caused some disruption. It's unclear how much. It seems it shouldn't be that much, except for Russian drones that were using these for guidance purposes, which have been touted lately. I think those probably won't be as effective, but I think those are more deep strike drones designed to like attack logistics behind the lines rather than the ones that would be immediately used at the front line, such as the ones just normal radio communication types, or the ones that were being fiber optic guided. That's interesting to see what impact that has. Meanwhile, it looks like the Ukrainians have pulled out an assassination of a deputy general, was a deputy intelligence officer in the Russian military intelligence. It was unsuccessful, but he was wounded. And I don't know how seriously, but apparently he's alive and treatment. I guess the Ukrainians are denying responsibility, although who else? A faction within Russia. But it's probably, if it is, it's probably a pro-Ukrainian faction, right? I mean, there are Ukrainian ethnics in Russia, and some of whom have occasionally engaged in anti-government operations, you might say. Just like there are anti-government factions in Iran that are engaged in anti-government operations there, which have been much discussed lately. So anyway, that's an interesting development there. And so meanwhile, the Ukrainians are apparently going to do one of their crazy attacks into Russia again. Apparently they're concentrating forces near, I think, in the Kharkiv region, probably going toward Belgorod. Why do they keep throwing their troops away doing these futile attacks? I mean, they do some damage, but it's not going to really change the Russian position a lot. Crazy, but nonetheless, that's being rumored as the next move that's sort of afoot, and we're kind of watching, how that goes. On the other side, and I got to say this, President Trump needs to get his house in order a little bit. I mean, this whole thing about the Obamas as being apes, meme video, racist video, what you want to call it. I at this point they're now blaming it on a staffer that come up with this. Another, I don't know. I mean, it just seems to me like they need to get their act together and not do things like this, regardless of whether the staffer did it or who else did it. I mean, this is not productive, and it gets in the way of the message that they're trying to put out, and it actually creates a negative message. Remember that Trump got perhaps the highest percentage of the black vote in the last election of any Republican in a long time. You don't want to mess that up with some stupid thing like this. It's incomprehensible that, regardless if it was a staffer, what kind of staffer would think that was useful? And why spend time putting, comical memes and stuff really on the president's feed? I mean, at any rate, I think this is a thing. We got to focus on winning this election in the fall. And anything that distracts from that is not a good thing. I don't think people understand that the risk this country's at from the Democrat Party and the radical loons that are gaining popularity within that party is very serious. These people could materially damage the country. Look how much damage the Biden regime did. I mean, look at the over 10 million plus illegal aliens in the country due to them. And this whole thing with ICE wouldn't have even be happening if it wasn't for what they did. I mean, so we have to be conscious of what we do here. We can't afford a lot of mistakes. And meanwhile, you have very important developments that's being distracted from. All-time record highs in the Dow Jones. You've got the Trump RX program that will greatly reduce the cost of certain very expensive medicines. I mean, and so forth. This is what we need to focus on, not on memes and quit battling over who won the 2020 election. It doesn't matter who legitimately won it. The bottom line is Biden got it, and it doesn't matter. The key thing is that we need to win our elections going forward. That's what's important. That's not to criticize an investigation down in Fulton County. If they can come up with something, that would be useful. It might be productive. But the main thing, on the other hand, there is this SAVE Act, which is up, which I'm all for it, but I can't imagine it getting through the Senate. Because bottom line is the Democrats are going to filibuster this. You can guarantee it. I mean, and as far as ending the filibuster, under Republican rule, I don't see that happening. Regardless of what Trump says about it, I don't think it's necessarily a good idea. But the big point is it doesn't matter, because I think there's enough Republicans that won't vote for it that are traditionalists, that with the Democrats all very hypocritically voting against ending it, because they all were ready to vote for ending it when they were in control. So there's no principle there on their part, but they will vote that way, I believe. So anyhow, I don't think that that'll pass. It'd be nice to have voter ID. On the other hand, I kind of question just how much that will really do. There is fraud, yes, but I wonder how much fraud would really be eliminated by that, really. I mean, obviously, if they didn't have legitimate IDs, I guess real IDs, as they call them now with the star on them, I guess that's what you'd be required to have. And because there you have to prove citizenship to get that. So, and so I guess, in fact, the last time I renewed my license, I still had to prove it again, even though I proved it some years earlier when I got the first real ID. So I guess I could have changed in the meantime. But at any rate, yeah, well, if they can pass it, great. I just don't know whether the fact the public's for it's going to change the Democrats. They're all about winning politically. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But at any rate, that's kind of it for this time. We can hope that they get this lady back from these kidnappers alive and well. I mean, it's a scary thing for the family, and that's a big thing dominating the news right now. And so I'll be wrapping that up for this time. And as always, of course, I put my this on YouTube and Rumble, and the address of my social media accounts are in the description below. So all for now.